21 of the 50 states have deregulated the monopolies, either both electricity or gas or both. Even California, that bastion of conservatism,
right,
to deal with the brownouts, has realized we've got to do some deregulation. We have to. And let me tell you this, there are only 5 public service commissioners in all of Louisiana. So that means each public service commissioner represents more people than Steve Scalise or Troy Carter or Julia Letlow. And to deregulate the monopoly, there's 5 public service commissioners. If I'm one of them, I need to change 2 minds, and change can be effective. If you're one of the 135 state reps, you need to get half plus 1. If you're one of the 7 senators, you need half plus 1. We need 3 people to affect real change. This is the most achievable change. We can do this. And it's a 6-year term, and they're staggered, which means every 2 years, 1 or 2 new people are coming in. The monopoly companies absolutely fear this.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
If you're looking to invest in physical precious metals or convert your 401k to a precious metals backed IRA, please consider making your investment with our trusted partner, Metal Stacks. Their prices regularly beat the big sites, and they have no credit card fees or minimums. Shipping is free for orders over $500. Just visit metalstacks.com/dwalker or get there from our website, freedomstate.us. If you're interested in the IRA conversion, drop me a message at Danielle at freedomstate.us and I can get you connected with their white glove service. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the State of Freedom. Sorry for the troubles there, stumbling as we were out of the gate this morning, but I think we're on track now. Welcome to the State of Freedom. I'm Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my dear friend and co-host, the watchdog, not the walk dog, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. We are coming.
I've been called worse.
Even this morning, probably.
Yeah, right. Yes.
We are coming to you live on Voice of the People, USA TV and radio network, on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. You can always catch us later on our audio-only podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast. And for those who have signed up for the Warrior Circle, we are streaming live there as well. So looks like I may have figured out how to do that, but
I think you got it, Danielle.
Not 100%. Just
You're
not
in better
100%.
shape than I am on it. I promise you.
Well, joining us today is John Mason. Let me bring John forward. And John is a candidate for District 1 of Louisiana's Public Service Commission, which is the regulatory agency responsible for overseeing public utilities and common carriers in Louisiana. He's a lifelong resident of New Orleans, and he's a practicing attorney there. We'll be talking about his candidacy and his vision for the future of power distribution and utilities in the state. Welcome to the show, John.
Yes, indeed.
Hey guys, thrilled to be here.
We're so happy to have you.
Absolutely.
Let me start with the scripture of the day. It is 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. And if y'all have your Bibles handy, you can read along. This is in the Passion Translation. It says, "Now I encourage you as an elder, an eyewitness of the sufferings of Christ, and one who shares in the glory that is about to be unveiled. I urge my fellow elders among you to be compassionate shepherds who tenderly care for God's flock and who feed them well, for you have the responsibility to guide, protect, and oversee. Consider it a joyous pleasure and not merely a religious duty. Lead from the heart under God's leadership, not as a way to gain finances dishonestly, but as a way to eagerly and cheerfully serve. Don't be controlling tyrants, but lead others by your beautiful examples to the flock. And when the shepherd king appears, you will win that victor's crown of glory. that never fades away. And as I was reading that this morning, I just thought it's such a beautiful picture of the Lord's expectation for leaders. You know, the Apostle Peter wrote this about leaders in the church, but it applies to all leadership positions. And as I was thinking about it, I was reminded that Jesus was never controlling. He never tried to manage people's behavior, saying, do this or don't do that. He always addressed the heart and the mindset that led them down the path of wrong thinking and wrong acting. And when his disciples failed, he spoke the truth to them in love, and he helped them clean up their mess. I think about the story of the disciples being unable to cast out a certain demon. And Jesus was explaining that, he explained why they hadn't been able to do it. And then he stepped in and performed the deliverance that they had been unable to. And when Peter cut off the priest's ear in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus scolded him, explaining that that this betrayal and arrest had to happen to fulfill God's prophetic plan. And then he restored the priest's ear. So I think the leadership Jesus modeled was the kind that was with and among the people, and it was not afraid of our messes. And the ultimate promise for this kind of leadership is a victor's crown of glory that never fades.
Absolutely, Danielle. And everything that you say is summarized in, what I believe was Jesus's public demeanor. His stance was always one of invitation in love, always one of invitation. You mentioned controlling tyrants. We could probably mention a few of those in our own state, not in the religious sphere, but in the political sphere. But Jesus' stance, one of invitation in love, and even after colossal failure, still continuing to invite. That's just towering love and towering mercy. But our guest today, John Mason, running for a Public Service Commission, as you said, in District 1, is absolutely not a controlling tyrant, really a man of the people, born of the people. And I am really honored to have you with us on the State of Freedom, John, to talk about what I believe are absolutely critical issues with respect to the PSC. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Again, I am absolutely delighted to be here and get the message out to the people. Most people don't really understand much about the Public Service Commission. It's probably the most important governmental agency that you've never heard of.
So very true, John. Why don't you, along those lines, why don't you tell our listeners briefly what the Public Service Commission does and why it is so important, the function it serves in our state?
Well, the Public Service Commission was created by the Louisiana Constitution way back in the early 1900s when it merged the Utilities Board, which manages things like setting your electricity rate, setting wastewater rates, with, believe it or not, the Railroad Commission. So the Public Service Commission is a mishmash of function. It controls, believe it or not, your electricity rate, the rate you get charged if your vehicle is towed on the interstate after an accident, the amount you pay to a mover if you're moving from one place in Louisiana to another place in Louisiana. It's like a duck-billed platypus, which is the only mammal that lays eggs, and it's the only mammal that's poisonous. It is truly a very odd organization. And one of the things that makes it more and more important is for most people, after your rent or your mortgage and your insurance, electricity is slowly taking over, utilities are taking over the number 3 spot from groceries as a part of your monthly budget because the rate keeps going up and up and up.
Yeah. John, what is, before I get specifically into that issue, is this a fair characterization of the PSC? Is the PSC essentially, or it's supposed to be sort of an advocate for the citizens of Louisiana to ensure that our rates are not oppressive and to ensure that we're not being taken advantage of by utility companies? Is that one of the central functions of the PSC?
It is absolutely the most important job of the Public Service Commission to make sure that electricity is reasonably priced and widely available. I mean, across the state. We shouldn't have blackouts or brownouts in a perfect world.
Yeah. John, why do you think it is, and this is a rather broad question, why do you believe it is that our utility rates, and I agree with you 100%, they are becoming more and more oppressive? Why do you believe that that is the case?
Well, there's a couple of reasons, and the most important one is that our electric companies, even the co-ops, are regulated monopolies. And I'm not picking on energy, they're just the biggest. There's Demco, Cleco, Swepco. There's a lot of electric companies. But unless you live in very certain areas of the state, you buy electricity from who you're told to buy it from, and you pay the price you're told to pay. It is the exact opposite of the free market capitalism that helped make America so great.
Yeah. What do you believe, John, can be done? I know one of your central planks in your platform is the deregulation of these utility monopolies, returning to more of a free market capitalist structure. And certainly in principle, we believe here at the State of Freedom that the more service industries that are competing for the business of the citizens, the better for the consumer. What do you propose can be done to break the back of this monopoly that exists in our state? You mentioned Entergy, and is Entergy the primary monopoly, or are there a couple of
It is
others?
the largest in Louisiana. It's not the only one by any means. And when I say energy, I am not picking on them. It
Right.
applies to any of these regulated monopolies. But that's a multifaceted question. Let me just give you some basic facts. In Louisiana, most utility companies are guaranteed about a 9.5% rate of return. Is your business guaranteed a 9% profit?
Absolutely not.
No, your business is guaranteed what you work for and what you earn.
Okay. And if there's storm damage and poles are knocked down and transformers are disrupted, um, they can pass almost 100% of those costs on to the ratepayer. We paid a $20 a month fee for 20 years to pay for Katrina. Right now, we have two $15 a month fees that are adding $30 to your utility bill every month, and they're on there for 15 or 20 years. So they don't have to pay for insurance. Does your business have to pay for insurance?
Absolutely.
So I think that these are costs the consumer's paying that can be and should be changed. Let me give you another example of how complex an issue this is. Louisiana is only one of 5 states in the union where business and industry pays more electricity, uses more electricity, I'll get it out, than residents. And that's because we have oil refineries and chemical plants. What most people don't know is that the oil refineries and chemical plants have to buy from the monopoly the same as you or me. And, I'm sure this is going to shock you. Oil can be used as a fuel source, gasoline, kerosene, things like that. They have to pay more to buy electricity than they could generate it themselves.
That is so
So
stupid.
if they're paying this much, but could generate it for this much, it's possible just by letting them generate their own electricity that the price of gasoline could go down.
It's so interesting that you
gosh.
mentioned that, because that's exactly the point that Danielle made during our pre-show. It was so interesting, Danielle, that you brought that up.
Yeah, specifically, I was interested in the data centers. So we were talking before the show, there's a lot of people in Northwest Louisiana specifically, but across the state that are very concerned about these AI data centers coming to Louisiana, and they're being built now. And people are really concerned that the people who pay their utility bills are fronting the cost for the expansion of the grid across the state to be able to support these AI data centers, and are even concerned beyond that once the data centers become operational, that we will be fronting the cost. What's the word? Hold on. Sorry. I'm trying to think of the word here that I was thinking of, but just basically offsetting the cost of their bills for AI. And I was just wondering, like, if this is such a great deal for the people of Louisiana, why are they not being made to bring their own power with them?
What do you think,
Well,
John?
because energy and it's very hard to get energy into or out of Louisiana because the monopolies don't want other companies selling electricity here. If you're any corporation, but especially a monopoly, its goal is to protect itself first. And to answer your question, I'm going to tell you, I don't know enough. Why don't I know enough? Because these contracts are not made public. They're
That's
all
insane.
hidden behind
God, that's
non-disclosure
such a great
agreements.
point, John. Such a great point. All these non disclosure agreements that these corporations enter into with our government, squeezing out the right of Louisiana citizens to know exactly what we are signing up for. You are so right about these NDAs. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's absolutely reprehensible in a constitutional republic that those types of details and those types of agreements that directly affect us as consumers would be shielded from us.
And worse, they're shielded from the regulators that make the decisions.
Yeah, that's it.
So it shows you how the government views the people, right? I mean, why put them in place? You know, what purpose are these government officials serving if they can't be transparent with the very people who allegedly put them there? It's absolutely disgusting to me.
Well, it is, and it's even worse. And I'm not trying to get us off topic because I want to talk about my campaign.
There's no such, John,
words.
there's no such thing here.
Carbon capture sequestration.
Yeah.
If that's not flaunting the will of the people, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And and John, and so many of these non-disclosure agreements are involving the carbon capture and sequestration. There's no question about that. But I want to ask you something, getting back to the original topic here. So say I'm a utility company, solvent, doing quite well in another state, and I want to come and do business in Louisiana, and I'm very eager to do so. So how would Entergy or, the politicians or the PSC members who support Entergy, how would they block that? Tell me about the impediments that I would face trying to come and do business in Louisiana in the spirit of essential competition and capitalism.
Well, the short answer is you can't. You can sell to a Louisiana monopoly at this price, and the Louisiana monopoly can resell it to us at this price. They're plus 9%, but you can't. They are granted regulatory monopolistic areas in which they practice.
Why is that, John? Why is that allowed in a free market economy?
Because this was set up in the very early 1900s when Louisiana had no electric grid. The idea was that if you guarantee these company monopolies, they will invest in the grid because they know they're going to make a fixed profit. Now, this may surprise you, and again, I hope you can tell I'm being facetious. Things have changed since 1915. Things have changed in the last 110 years. And Texas has led the way in this. And everyone will say, oh, but they had that storm where prices spiked. Yes, they had a once-in-a-lifetime storm. Have you heard about any problems since? 21 of the 50 states have deregulated the monopolies, either both electricity or gas or both. Even California, that bastion of conservatism,
right,
to deal with the brownouts, has realized we got to do some deregulation. We have to. And let me tell you this. There are only 5 public service commissioners in all of Louisiana. So that means each public service commissioner represents more people than Steve Scalise or Troy Carter or Julia Letlow. And to deregulate the monopoly, there's 5 public service commissioners. If I'm one of them, I need to change 2 minds, and change can be effected. If you're one of the 135 state reps, you need to get half plus 1. If you're one of the 7 senators, you need half plus 1. We need 3 people to affect real change. This is the most achievable change. We can do this. And it's a 6-year term, and they're staggered, which means every 2 years, 1 or 2 new people are coming in. The monopoly companies absolutely fear this. Let me ask you a hypothetical question. Our predecessor, who is conservative, he co-chaired Trump's Louisiana campaign, has been in there 18 years.
You're talking about Eric Skrmetta.
Yeah. I am. I'm trying to avoid names, but how many times has Mr. Skrmetta proposed deregulating our utility companies? None. Well, Foster Campbell, who's up north, he was on before term limits. He's been up there 24 years, quarter of a century. He is very far to the left. How many times has he proposed breaking up the monopoly? None. So why is it that the far left and the far right are behaving the same way?
Is that John? That leads me to this. Does it have something possibly to do with money?
Well, if you look at Mr. Scrimmetta, you'll see he's received about $750,000, $750K from utility companies, their CEOs, their officers, and Mr. Campbell has received about $600,000.
Yeah.
In
How do
Alabama,
you?
for
Yeah.
example, you
Interesting. Go ahead.
cannot donations from the entities you regulate. And I'll tell you this, I am not taking donations from anything that I would regulate as public service commissioner. I'm just not going to do it. It's a conflict of interest.
It's
At the very
absolutely.
least, it's an appearance of impropriety.
Yeah. And Chris, how much success have we had in the bills that we put forward that would bring greater, stronger ethical rules to the state?
It's been very, very difficult to get real transparency, real campaign finance reform passed in the legislature.
Or any manner of reform to ethics in the state.
Yeah, in any manner of reform. So John, it is, you're exactly right. It is a direct conflict of interest, very similar, in my view, to the relationship between our national public health agencies and big pharma. The billions of dollars that our regulatory agencies are receiving from the very pharmaceutical companies that they are supposed to be regulating. The same thing is occurring right here in Louisiana. It seems really, really odd that that would be allowed to go on. But in your view, that is the very reason why the Public Service Commission has been mute on the idea of deregulation and breaking this monopoly.
Yes, I mean, if I went to 10 people and you're one of them and I said, look, I just got some donation from company XYZ and I have to vote on allowing XYZ to raise their rates, but that money is not going to influence my vote. What are you going to think?
Well, I've got some oceanfront property, Big John, in Arizona that I'm going to sell to you for monopoly money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The average citizen doesn't like the look, the feel, or the smell of it.
Yeah. So, John, you can, as a member of the Public Service Commission, so my understanding from what you're saying is this busting of this monopoly can be done in one of two ways. It could either be done legislatively, or alternatively, it could be done on the 5-member Public Service Commission with 3 votes.
It can be done with 3 votes. It's pretty much, not quite, but it's almost as simple as saying to any company that agrees to abide by Louisiana's regulations. I mean, we don't want to totally remove every regulation. But as a side note, if you have 500 pages of regulations, you could probably cut those down to 70 or 80 without really losing anything. But if you tell an oil refinery, a chemical company, or any company that wants to be regulated, you can generate your own electricity as long as you generate 15% more than you use. Now, what's going to happen with that excess electricity? They can ground it and throw it away. I'm not forcing anyone to do anything with it. Or they can say, we could pay Entergy a small fee, or Demco or Cleco, to use their grid, and we could sell this. And if they start selling it, what's going to happen to the price for the average consumer? What happens when competition increases? The price goes down.
Absolutely.
And even more startling, and I mean, it may not happen in my tenure, but if companies say, hey, we're making some serious scratch selling this electricity, maybe we could build a little of our own infrastructure so we don't have to pay Entergy so much. And now they're developing the infrastructure that we're trying to get people to pay for so that Meta can come in. And once you start having competition on both the production and the infrastructure, now you're talking about how to meet the needs of the future. You're not speculating. There was an article this morning on the Hayride written by Dr. I don't know if it's Sadow or Sadow, about the Public Service Commission. Do they charge people for infrastructure, or do they hope the infrastructure comes? And it's a very well-written article, but I think we can encourage companies to build it just as part of the free market. Yeah. And speaking of the free market, if you want the cheapest electricity possible, you should be able to buy it. If you say, I only want green energy that is produced by windmills and solar power and organically raised chickens, I think you should have the option to pay more and get it. Because
Yeah.
the person that knows best for you and your family, I give you a hint, it's not the Public Service Commissioner,
Yeah.
it's you.
I hope you have plenty of firewood. Hope you have plenty of firewood.
I want to get back to something you mentioned at the top, which is, oh my gosh, all my thoughts are just running away from me this morning. We have reached the end of the week almost. So you were talking about, well, I don't really remember, but the point that I was going to raise based on that was Texas. You were talking about Texas and saying that their energy system is better insulated from natural disasters than ours is. Can you talk a little bit about, we had Chris, help me out, the gentleman who runs
Wayne
the
Christian.
the Center for Security Policy.
What?
All right, we're
Why are
both
we-
on the struggle bus today.
Yeah.
Anyway, the moral of the story is someone came on and talked about the serious concern they had about the state of our security, the security
Tommy
aspect
Waller.
of our grid.
Tommy
Thank
Waller.
you. Good grief. We'll make it. We'll make it, folks.
Semper Fi, Tommy.
Yeah. So he was talking about the fact that the way Louisiana's electric grid was set up is very concerning from a national security perspective, because it's all connected together. So they could take it down basically pretty easily if someone wanted to and had a mind to do it. Do you have any? How does national security figure into your perspective?
There's several ways we can approach this. One of the good things Mr. Scrimetta did, and Mr. Scrimetta has been a very good public service commissioner, except for his love of monopolies and his anti-competition bent. He had proposed that any vital component be only made with American parts, because some of our transformers and grid transmission, they're made by the Chinese.
Yeah.
And I believe that went down 4-1. I was thinking, why would anyone in their right mind vote against that? Number two, Texas made the radical decision, we're going to run our own grid so that we don't have to do what we're told to do by the feds. And I mean, they're still bound by federal law, of course, but Texas's grid is independent. If our grid goes down today and everybody else's grid goes down today, Texas still has power. And that's something I'd like to do, but it's a 6-year term. You can win 3 terms. You got 18 years. It's on my to-do list. That is vitally important. But I want to start by saying, hey, can I introduce some free market capitalism? Because I think once you do that, things are going to start to fall in line.
And John, I think the only way that can happen is if there is a prohibition from public service commissioners receiving any money, any monetary donations from any utility company in Louisiana that they regulate. And since they're obviously not willing to do so of their own volition, this may be a matter of enormous public pressure on the Public Service Commission, because until this industry is deregulated, until there is real competition in the system, our utility rates are going to continue to increase, and we're going to continue to suffer, because Entergy, it's the equivalent of a bad parent, that's abusing his kid, and he doesn't have any incentive to stop abusing the kid, because you know what? You're 11 years old. Where are you going to go? You got nowhere to go.
Well,
so,
look,
I
can hear Entergy's response right now. They're going to say, we have some of the lowest rates in the country. And they're absolutely correct. We have an abundance of natural gas. Our rates are cheap, but we also have fees, tariffs, surcharges. Our bills keep going up while our rates stay low. So it's not that we have high rates, and we do, in all fairness. This is a deep South. We use a lot of electricity. But to answer your question, it's not enough to have a rule. For example, the Public Service Commission has a rule that says you cannot take any donations 3 days from a company 3 days before you vote on that company. You can do the research and find out that rule has been flaunted more than once.
But you could take it 4 days before. You could take a check 4 days before.
You could, but there's been instances where they literally take it the night before. but it's not enforced and there's no real penalty. The law has no teeth. Ideally, the legislature would step in and not make it just for the Public Service Commission. Any regulatory authority in the state of Louisiana ought not be accepting donations from that which it regulates.
It's
And
just
John,
it's so commonsensical.
I have a stronger perspective than that. I don't think companies should be able to donate money into political campaigns at all. I think it should just be people, because people are the ones that vote. Does a company want you to vote a certain way? Maybe so, but guess what? They don't get a vote. So why should they be able to have a voice in your campaign? That my dream campaign finance would say no companies vote, no NGOs vote, so the people are the only ones who get to donate.
Well, then the legislature is going to jump up and yell First Amendment rights, and the lawyers are going to get involved. And when lawyers get involved, generally things go south pretty quickly.
Yeah,
That's true. But do corporations have First Amendment rights or just people?
Under our system, corporations are considered juridical persons. That way you can charge them with crimes. Now, whether you can pierce the corporate veil and go after the board of directors is another question, but they are considered fictitious juridical people.
they are.
That's why they have the same rights as everybody else.
Yeah. Let me ask you about, John, is Delta, I've noticed recently, as of this year, Delta Utilities is now our gas utility, no longer Entergy. And I noticed that and I've had several people contact me and LeCag on this issue. Well, they said it's going to be a certain amount per month when they transferred over to Delta Utilities. And at this point, it seems like it keeps going up every month, our gas bill.
Well, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. Wait, I'm sorry.
Famous last words.
Yeah. So
yeah,
your
Entergy-
point, John, your point is that, yes, we do have, we have cheap rates. But what we have, it's cheap in the sense that, what we're actually paying for the energy. But when they're attaching all these other fees and bills onto our bill, what difference does it make?
A difference that makes no difference is no difference, to quote the idiom. With Delta, anything that involves a city that takes over its own utilities, and there are plenty of them, Lafayette, New Orleans, that's why we have an Entergy New Orleans and Entergy Louisiana. They want to get a thumb in the pie and get some of the cash too, which means it's exempt from the public service regulation, and you add all new levels of regulation. So I suspect Delta can fairly say that, hey, we had this new regulation and these new taxes, so yeah, we had to go up on the price. But that was foreseeable. The bottom line is Entergy will tell you one thing, and they'll tell you we got the cheapest rates in the nation. That's true. We don't have the cheapest bills in the nation.
Yes.
Not by a long shot.
And that is where the rubber meets the road. John, if you were to pose this question to the average citizen across the state of Louisiana, do you believe that there should be a prohibition against any utility company, or let's just say, should there be a prohibition against any public service commissioner from accepting campaign or any kind of monetary donation from any corporation or utility company in the state that they are responsible for protecting you against? How many citizens do you think would say, no, I'm not in favor of that?
There's always some. Maybe 10%, because you can't get 10 people to agree on just about anything. But I think if you put it to a plebiscite and we all voted, there'd be no doubt in my tiny brain that it would be at least 80% would say that's the way it should be. That's the way some other states do it.
It just seems like and it's a huge issue, John. This is not just theoretical. This is a massively important issue, not only in terms of our rates and our bills, but ethically. Ethically, it's a massively important issue. And, and I'm glad that this is a central plank in your platform.
If you're not ethical, then, and I've heard people say, do politicians have ethics? Well, yeah, I think most do, but it's easier to blend in than to stand out. We don't have so much public servants today as we have public lords and public ladies. If the will of the people predominated...
Controlling tyrants, as Danielle referenced in the scripture today, controlling tyrants.
Tyrants.
That's essentially what you are describing here, John.
That's what we have. Do you honestly think if you put it to a vote of the people that the carbon capture sequestration would pass? That if people understood that a private company can take their land from them for a pittance to store something that could well poison our groundwater, you think they'd be in favor of that?
No. And John, where do you think the rest of the PSC sits on the deregulation issue? You mentioned two folks, one outgoing and one leftist. Of the other three, are there any that would support deregulation with you?
To be honest, right now, no. Do you know the definition of insanity? You keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result.
Yeah.
I got to watch District, I think it was 2. The Baton Rouge area district was the last Public Service Commission race. There were 2 Republicans, John Paul Cousson, Julie Quinn, and 1 Democrat, Nick, what was his name? Blanchard, Broussard, start with a B.
Okay.
And I watched a debate hosted by the Baton Rouge Press Club. And by the way, I would love to have a debate. We have not had one in District 1. The media just has zero interest. But I got to watch that debate that was hosted by the Baton Rouge Press Club. And that question was asked, how do you feel about deregulation of monopolies? And they were both, oh no, terrible idea. And you want to throw a brick at the screen. Letting the people choose where they want to get their power from is a terrible idea. It's not just, and I'm not picking on John Paul Cousson, Julie Quinn, the guy, Mark Wright, who's the only other announced candidate against me, but if you keep electing the same class of people, term limited legislators, are you going to get a different result? I don't think so.
Excellent question.
Yeah, that really is an excellent question. You've mentioned carbon capture sequestration a couple of times here, John, so I want to drill down on that a little bit. So there was a bill that was passed in the legislature this past session that purports to diminish eminent domain for carbon capture and sequestration. Now in Louisiana, a company that wants to do carbon capture sequestration has to qualify as what's called a common carrier. And I know you know full well what that is, but for the benefit of our listeners, that basically means that it's a company that is transporting some kind of a commodity that is a good or service of public benefit. Obviously, carbon capture and sequestration, burying tremendous amounts of CO2 permanently under people's property is not, a public benefit, certainly is not a commodity. So, that is a hurdle that these companies would have to overcome. But the issue is this: in our state, the entity that makes that decision initially, whether they're a common carrier, is the Commissioner of Conservation. And then ultimately, I think the Public Service Commission would make a determination about whether they're a public utility. So I'm sorry that I don't have real confidence in either the Commissioner of Conservation or as in the Public Service Commission to make the right determination on common carrier with regard to CCS. So where does that leave people once they decide, oh yes, against all logic and all reason, these CCS companies are common carriers. So here it comes on your land. Where does that leave the property owner? Having to go file a lawsuit and spend a ton of money and engage in costly and protracted litigation, maybe to get relief and maybe not to get relief. So that's the problem with the common carrier, that many of these legislators who seem to be straddling both sides of the fence here, that's what they're hanging their hat on. Oh, they have to qualify as a common carrier. I'm sorry to Louisiana citizens across the state whose generational property is being threatened by this racket. I'm sorry that that's not a lot of consolation.
Well, in the first place, and I haven't checked in the last few days, so maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I know, all the companies that have applied so far have been approved. I don't think conservation has rejected any. That's scary. Number 2, I keep hearing, I have several friends that are state reps, that if the Public Service Commission, which does regulate common carriers, causes too much of a ruckus about carbon capture sequestration, the legislature will take that authority away. And I guess that's supposed to cow our commissioners into behaving.
Wow.
Wait a minute, John. My gosh. Boom. Danielle, did you hear
That
that right?
is, yeah, it's not surprising. It's not surprising because they love to run roughshod. Certain members of the legislature will love to run roughshod over any other agency, over the people, just like you said, just like we said, controlling tyrants who think that they lord over us and that we are just simple little peons who don't know what we really want, don't know what would be in our own best interest. That is insane, John. I'd like to find out who those people are.
And let me say this too. This is a civil matter. You get a free lawyer if you're charged with a crime. But if eminent domain is exercised and you lose your land, you have to pay for the lawsuit costs up until when you win, in which case you may get some of those costs back, but you're not going to get the attorney's fees back. In other words, for most people of moderate means or who aren't wealthy, they're up the proverbially polluted creek without proper means of propulsion.
Yeah. So, John, what you're saying here to us is that you've heard through what I'm sure is your exceedingly effective grapevine that the legislature has put the Public Service Commission on notice that if you mess with common carrier, if you basically make a decision that is the correct decision, which everybody knows carbon capture and sequestration is not a public, then we're gonna take the authority to make that determination away from you.
That's the rumors I'm hearing. I certainly can't prove anything, and I want to be clear to the listeners that that's just what I'm hearing.
Yet another reason why we have no confidence in the current legislative structure regarding carbon capture sequestration in Louisiana. Yet another reason.
Yeah, they can
It's
act
hard to
so.
have much faith in government at the moment.
Yeah, it is. They act so, what's the right word? Like they've got their tail between their legs when they have to go to those town halls and get confronted on their votes regarding eminent domain for carbon capture. And they say that they want to do something different. They didn't understand. They didn't know it was so concerning to the people. And then they're going to turn around and vote the same dang way.
And fail to call a special legislative session. So they have their violin out and they're expressing this colossal remorse for making these big mistakes by ushering carbon capture sequestration into our state, yet they're mute when it comes to calling a special session to repeal this disaster.
Exactly. I was about to say, we're all human. We make mistakes.
That's right.
The last person that didn't make any mistakes, we nailed to a cross. So, okay, you made a mistake. The next session doesn't even have to be a special session. Introduce a bill to repeal it and undo your mistakes. How many of those have been filed?
And don't, John, well, to be honest with you, I'll gently correct you on that. There have been a number of bills in 2025 that were filed to repeal eminent domain and on other issues to seriously roll back carbon capture sequestration. And guess what happened? Every single one of them failed in a Republican-dominated House Natural Resource Committee. Every single one of them. And the best we were able to salvage out of the 2025 session was what I just told you a few minutes ago with regard to the common carrier issue. You don't automatically get eminent domain unless the Commissioner of Conservation and the Public Service Commission rubber stamps that these purveyors of this garbage are common carriers, which is going to happen. So John, I don't know what's going on down there in the House Natural Resources Committee, but there's a 70% Republican dominated House Natural Resources Committee, and they couldn't get a damn thing out of that committee in 2025 because of Republicans.
Well, you know the saying, all conservatives are Republicans, but not all Republicans are conservatives? There is the, I don't know, they say that rhinos are endangered, maybe in Southeast Asia. They're alive and well here.
They are alive and well here.
They're spawning very prolifically here in Louisiana.
Yeah, we have a lot of feral rhinos here.
Yes, we do. Yes, a lot of them. John, I want to mention something that just popped into my head here. Danielle, I don't know if you know this, but when I first started LeCag, the very first legislative summary that I did way back in 2022, John Mason, our guest here today, had a radio show at that time. And he emailed me and called me up and strongly requested that I come onto his radio show and talk about all of those bad Republican votes on all those critical issues. Not only did he not shy away from it, he was very impressed with what we had compiled. And we spent about an hour and a half hammering rhinos, legislative rhinos, on the Big John Mason show. So, John, I don't know if I've ever had a chance to properly thank you for that, but I really appreciate it.
Well, you and me were one of the only two people. Moon Griffon does it too, but he wasn't on in New Orleans. You had to listen to Moon over the internet. No one names names. People are scared. They're hesitant. And we're going to keep getting this kind of legislative representation until the first big name legislator loses an election because the constituents held his feet to the fire. Let me draw a parallel. Cassidy votes to impeach Trump. He figures in 6 years, everyone will have forgotten. We're going to find out in this election. Closed primaries, the election is in May. I'm on the down ballot. We're going to find out if people forgive and forget or just plain forget. And I pray that the answer is no.
Indeed, we will. And John, I would suggest that based upon the platform that you've laid out for us here today, I would suggest that you and your philosophy is much more closely aligned to the citizens in District 1 than your opponent. And when we close out our show here, Danielle and I will have the opportunity in a very objective, but in a very meticulous way, to talk a little bit about Representative Mark Wright's votes in the state legislature this last term, for which he received a 78 out of 100, a high C as a Republican. But as Danielle pointed out on the show, relatively speaking, it was higher than some of the other Republicans got. But the point is, if I had to cast my vote tomorrow for the Public Service Commission, there's no question about where I would be headed on this. No doubt.
Well, thank you. And look, a C isn't bad, but is that what we want? To settle for mediocrity?
Right.
I mean, you're not the only organization to have ranked, and I'm not picking on Mr. Wright, but there are other scorecards. Consistently scores about a 7 out of 10, 78. Nothing wrong with that, but is that the best we can do?
There you go.
Well, we're going to continue to be mediocre in many respects in our state if we continue to elect legislators who are not fiercely dedicated to the best interests of Louisiana citizens and to the Constitution and to liberty, as I know from my own personal experience with you that you are.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Well, John, if are there any last thought? Let me ask you this. I always do this, and we may not be able to have you back on between now and the primary, but I want to ask you, when voters in District 1 go in to vote on Election Day, and they're trying to make a decision about whether to pull that lever for you or for Mark Wright or for any other candidate who happens to be in the race between now and qualifying, what is the last thing that you want them to be thinking about when they make that vote?
Well, I got into this because I was helping my grandmother pay her electricity bill. And I kept asking, why is it so high? So I just did some basic research. And I came up with a plan that I think would help. That's why I'm not running for, say, insurance commissioner or agriculture and forestry. I don't know much about agriculture and forestry, but I want this office because I have a plan. I think many of my opponents are term limited and they want an office. A regular Joe, just like the voter. I'm not doing this. This job pays a massive $41,000 a year and it's part-time, so there are no benefits. I'm not going to stop being a lawyer. I'm not doing this to go to parties. I'm not doing this because it's going to make me rich. Well, maybe there's some insider trading. I'm kidding, just kidding. But
get with.
That's right. I'm doing this because I want to help.
Yeah, I think it's so important that last comment that you just made, that your desire to do this grew organically from your own personal experience in trying to help your mom. I think that's very, very powerful. And Danielle, any final thoughts for John here?
No, I just encourage people to take a look at his website. We have it here put up. It is, let me see, I'll get it here. bigjohnmason.com. And so you can catch more, you can donate to his campaign there, and you can find out more about his platform there and reach out if you want to volunteer, I guess, John.
And I made that website myself because I didn't want to spend campaign funds to pay anyone. I'm not a term limited state legislature. My opponent has a ton more money. It's so hard to ask people for money because they worked hard for it. I work hard for mine. But if you've got a spare $20 or 100, I will do the best with it that I possibly can.
Yeah, I know you will, and I'm sure that you will remain faithful all along. Big John Mason, what a pleasure to have you with us today, sir. God bless you and Godspeed. The primary election, if I'm not mistaken, has been moved to May 16th, right?
It was April 18th. It's May 16th. Qualification is next month. It's about 5 months away, a little over 5 months away. Now the real election's in November, but if you don't make it out of the primary, the election's over for you.
Yeah. Would you rather there be 3 in your race so there is a Republican runoff, or what is your preference if you had your way on it?
Well, to me, it really doesn't matter who's running. If you can find someone that's more conservative than me, because this is a closed primary and will do a better job, I'll vote for them. If someone qualifies that I didn't expect and I think they got a better plan, I promise you I'll vote for them. So to me, it doesn't matter. If there's only 2 people in the primary, then I've already made the runoff.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Now, it's true it would give me a little more time to raise more money, but it would give my opponent the same advantage. So
That's true.
Don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing what you're doing, John, and thank you for being a purveyor of common sense. That's what keeps coming to my mind, a purveyor of common sense, the kind of common sense that I'm sure most citizens of this state have. So thank you, and God bless you.
You and Danielle as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. God bless you. Chris, not only common sense, but ethics. I mean, how many candidates come out swinging saying that they future colleagues are basically, all corrupt?
Yeah. I would say very, very few. There's one that comes to mind, and his initials are DT.
Yeah, that's right. DJT, I think you're
DJT, and there aren't a whole lot of other ones besides that. So, Mark Wright is an established politician in the state of Louisiana. He's been in the legislature for a number of years. I think he chairs one of the committees there. I don't know which one it is right off, but, Mark Wright got a 78 for a reason on our scorecard. He made some good votes. He did vote for Mike Facey's chemtrails bill in the Senate, to ban chemtrails, but he was absent for Kim Coates' chemtrail bill, which was a much stronger bill. All the garbage that they're pushing out of the backs of these planes, they're polluting our plants and our environment. Yeah, he was absent for that vote. He was also absent for the vote that restricts or entirely eliminates the right of Louisiana citizens to conduct exit polls at voting precincts while continuing to protect the rights of CNN. He voted to ban handheld cell phones in our vehicles. This big brother government overreach.
Yeah.
As Mike Baham called, this revenue harvesting bill. He voted against requiring civil actions for eminent domain brought by these companies against landowners to be brought in the parish where the landowner lives. He was absent for a number of critical votes, not the least of which was Danny McCormick's HB 75, which essentially said that if you're a property owner and you don't volunteer to surrender your land and to be part of this unit, and you fight it till the end, and then you ultimately are forced to surrender your land, you don't have to be penalized in the amount of compensation that you receive for your pore space. You have to be compensated on the same maximum level as a person who volunteered right at the outset. Mark Wright was absent for that vote. He was absent for HB 400, which was 685, Emily Chenever's vote on DEI to get that out of the school. She fought so hard to purge our public agencies from this Marxist garbage, DEI and CRT. She fights so hard on the House floor. She was bloodied badly, as you know, on the House floor. Yeah. She got Republican support. Mark Wright was absent for the vote. And I could go on and on. He did stand up and vote against HB 148, which is the bill that ended up passing that confers this massive plenary authority on the Commissioner of Insurance, which is a recipe for political corruption, and several other things that he did that were right, which is why he didn't get a D or an F, because he did some things that were good. At least he voted the right way. But on certain very, very important issues, he was either absent or he voted the wrong way. And so, and it's all on our scorecard, lacag.org, if anybody wants to go look at Mark Wright's comprehensive score and how we calculated it for the 2025 legislative session. So if I'm making a choice, Danielle, between John Mason and Mark Wright for the Public Service Commission, it's a no-brainer. Mark Wright is a decent person. I have nothing against him on a personal level, but he is not a reliable conservative. That's absolutely 100% true, and I know it personally.
And Chris, he is only 2 years into his first term as a state senator. Is that right?
He's a state rep.
Oh, so he's a state rep.
Yeah, Mark Wright is a state rep.
So he's a new one, right? Or his
I believe so. Yes, he is. He's new. You remember, Danielle, HB 590, the very airtight bill by Annie Spell that would have categorically prohibited any foreign donations for ballot initiatives in Louisiana or for Louisiana campaigns. Actually, much better than Mark Wright's own bill that has a loophole in it that does allow foreign donors to donate to Louisiana elections, a glaring loophole that her bill didn't have. Well, Mark Wright did, and that bill died on the House floor. If Mark Wright were extremely concerned about campaign finance reform, you would think he and others would have been clamoring and demanding that HB 590 be called for a vote on the House floor, but they didn't. They were silent on the issues.
Well, Chris, isn't it interesting that Big John talked about the fact that the PSC voted against American-made critical infrastructure as a requirement for themselves for our infrastructure as a state, and our elected officials are allowed to take foreign donations? Is there, you see any connection there?
You know what? Yes, there is more than a threadbare connection between those 2 points. Speaking of foreign parts, Danielle, you remember HB 577, Nancy Landry's omnibus election bill from the 2025 session, whereby she assumes almost plenary authority to determine, without really an open and transparent and competitive bidding process, which election vendor is going to be awarded the $150 million computer voting contract in Louisiana. It was a horrible bill that we fought against. Well, Mark Wright voted for that legislation as well. So again, we're not here to give a comprehensive legislative recap on Mark Wright, but it was worth mentioning these issues because he is John's only opponent currently in the PSC race, and I think people have a right to know something about his legislative history.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, I wanted to draw something else out, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I may be misremembering this, but I believe when we first got started in the 2023 session with the State of Freedom, was it Jean-Paul Cusson who was the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee whenever there was a bill that you testified on that would have removed the eminent domain provision for carbon capture? And he, as I recall, was very disrespectful of you. And also, I mean, you disagreed. You didn't think he was disrespectful. I did. But I just think that it's fascinating that he finds himself as a public service commissioner now.
I think it is absolutely fascinating. Jean-Paul Cusson, you're exactly right. You got a good memory, Danielle. 2023, he was the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, and he was instrumental both by his lack of leadership and, in some cases, by his affirmative vote in killing Sherman Mack's bill that would have repealed eminent domain for carbon capture sequestration. It was involuntarily deferred, and there is no question that Jean-Paul Cusson is pro-CCS. Anybody who questions that, well, I invite you to a debate anytime, any place, anywhere. There's no doubt he was for it. So, yeah, that's exactly right. He was no help to the anti-CCS forces in the legislature in 2023.
Yeah. Chris, are you prepared? Because we're on track this morning. We're doing good, right?
Look, I'm hanging in there. I'm just hanging on to your coattails over here.
No, not today. Not today. My coattails.
Or short?
I think I forgot my coat today. Listen, are you able to do an ad read for Blanco
Sure.
Brothers?
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll put up the ad now.
Yeah. I just want to give a plug for Blanco's Brothers Construction, Oscar Blanco's roofing company, and really more general construction, gutters and sheet metal work. Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Let him work with your insurance company and let him treat you right if you have a problem. There's no more important commodity on your home, Danielle, than your roof. And, when there's a problem with it, you need to be able to trust both financially and with respect to the workmanship who is doing your work. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. We're so proud to be partnering with them, and it's all right, let me see if I can get us back. I mean, I don't know.
Pull me back from the ledge,
Yeah.
Danielle.
Yeah, exactly. But I enjoyed our conversation with John Mason today. I think there was a little bit of a lag on the text, so it made the conversation maybe not as easy flowing as it could have been otherwise. But I really appreciate that he's taking a fresh perspective. I love that he is so earnest that he said, you know what, if somebody's got a better plan than me, I'll vote for them. You vote for them. I don't care. What I want to do is fix this situation for the people of Louisiana. That's the kind of leadership I want to see. That's the kind of heart I want to see in candidates across this state and in politicians across this state. And so I think, Chris, that we're going to have our work cut out for us fighting in the legislature this session to try and at least, if we can't get the change we need, we at least need to get the exposure we need so that some of these people can be ripped out of their seats in a few years.
Yep. All we're asking for is that voters in legislative districts across the state have unfiltered and accurate information with respect to what their representatives are doing in the legislature. We are relentless on that and will continue to be so, because you cannot make an informed choice if you don't know what is going on. And too often, they cannot count on their own representatives to accurately tell them what is going on. So that's why LaCAG exists, and that's why the State of Freedom exists. And I encourage everyone who's listening to support, donate, subscribe to the State of Freedom. We are your purveyor of liberty, and it's a responsibility that we take very, very seriously, uncompromisingly. So support the State of Freedom, advertise on the State of Freedom, 1,000 on average listeners to every live show. And I'm just thrilled to death. #1 podcast in Louisiana, FeedSpot, and 1 million podcasts. After how long have we been doing this, Danielle? 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years. And
3
I
years.
just want to mention as well, Chris, a big shout out to Rumble. Thank you, folks at Rumble, for featuring us today. It's always an honor to be able to be up on the editor's picks board. And I also want to make a plug for the Warrior Circle. That is our membership program. If you love the content you see here, support us. It's $10 a month, and you get exclusive content, and you get to have a voice in the topics of the conversation we have here on the State of Freedom. So we would love for you to join us, and you can do that at join.freedomstate.us, or if you just go to freedomstate.us, you can find the button there. Also, another announcement: next week on Tuesday, we will be back here with you at 10 a.m. Central. We'll have attorney William Most back with us to talk about the seemingly very nefarious behavior of Louisiana's Economic Development Agency that Big John was also referencing through the use of these non-disclosure agreements that are shielding the public from vital information, shielding municipalities from vital information on decisions that are being made above our head by the ladies and lords, as Big John so eloquently put it, who lord over us and tell us what's going to happen in our lives.
Absolutely, Danielle. We're going to get a government of, by, and for the people. And to round out what you said originally, not a government of, by, and for controlling tyrants.
Yeah.
That's not what our founders fought for. That's not what they bled for. It's not what they died for. They fought to liberate us from controlling tyrants.
That's
and
right.
we have way too many of them in our midst now. So let's continue to fight, Danielle, moving forward. I'm so proud of our success to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. God bless you. I will see you on Tuesday.
God bless.
Meet the world's first living, full-spectrum, certified organic CBDA hemp extract. Ness's hemp oil was extracted from seed to bottle without chemicals, solvents, or heavy metals, and it surpasses world-class standards for purity. This pure and powerful CBDA has been proven to reduce aches and pains, ease mental tension, and promote better sleep. To get yours today, visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.